What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. This is the aftermath. And boy, is there destruction to kick through. 47-17, the Patriots taking on the chin from the Buffalo Bills in a super wild card round playoff game. Phil Perry, you were there. It couldn't have looked as bad in person as it looked on the television, could it have?
Maybe it looked worse. I don't know. It didn't look good. Tell you that much. Up close and personal, you could get a real good sense of just how much better the Bills were than the Patriots tonight. No question.
3 years in a row, the Patriots season comes to an early end. 19 against the Titans, 20 they didn't even make it. We knew they probably wouldn't. And then this year, the end comes early again. I don't know if Bill Belichick buys, however, the notion of dominance from the Buffalo Bills. The reason I say that is because many times in his post-game press conference, Bill was saying they were better than us tonight. We couldn't keep up with them tonight. Listen a little bit to Bill's tone and the references to tonight.
You know, we just couldn't keep up with them tonight. So, yeah, I said we couldn't keep up with them tonight, and we couldn't. Yeah, they were too much for us tonight.
Phil, maybe I'm reading too much into the application of that word. But when I look at the history of the Patriots and the Bills with Josh Allen at quarterback, I can't help but going back to that Monday Night Football interview that he had with Brian Griese and Louis Riddick, about Josh Allen and him scoffing at him as a would-be MVP candidate. But when we look at it, since that conversation, Josh Allen has performed against them unbelievably well. And I don't know if he really buys it, even though he's paying lip service to it. Is the Patriots defense this bad? Or is Josh Allen making them look worse than they really are?
Can we just say Josh Allen's a very, very good quarterback? Can I just read you some notes from Buffalo Bills PR? More touchdowns than incompletions, 5-4. First player in NFL history, Tom, with 5 passing touchdowns, an 80% completion percentage, and 50-plus rush yards. First player in playoff history, 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 60-plus rush yards. He's a great player. I don't know what Bill Belichick was getting at by saying tonight. If I had to guess, Tom, he might have been getting at the fact that they were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so tonight, where you have no pass rush, because Christian Barmore's not himself and Matthew Judon's not himself, and you have no coverage because Jalen Mills is out, and you have Jawan Williams and Devontae Busby and D'Angelo Ross running around out there. That would be my best guess.
And Kyle Duggar with a club on his arm.
Right. He's a great player, though, and they have to come to grips with the fact that they have to figure out a way to beat this team now. Twice a year, every year, you want to win the division. That's the first thing on your list of goals every single season, and you're not going to do it unless you can figure out a way to stop that guy, whether it's keeping up with him on the scoreboard or stopping him defensively. So I'm not sure what Bill Belichick was getting at tonight, because his team, admittedly, they admitted it. They all did at the podium. They actually couldn't stop them, Tom. They were not stopped. It was the first time in NFL history that an offense was not stopped in that fashion. So the Patriots should have nothing but the utmost respect for Josh Allen because of what he did to them tonight and what he did to them the last time they saw him, Tom. They made him look like a superhero these last 2 games.
And in doing so, though, and that's what I mean, I'm sure the Bill would say, yeah, he's good, but it's not like he's, Superman. There are things that we can do to stop him. We weren't at our best. We didn't play with focus or energy or urgency. This guy was out, and that guy was out, and that guy had a bust. I really think that there are times when Bill has a hard time getting his mind around. There are occasions when you can't scheme it up. And Ted Johnson, interestingly, after we finished Postgame Live, mentioned, it's these guys who can perform off schedule who make it so hard for Bill. Cam Newton was a hard guy for Bill to deal with, because it wasn't just that he was a capable thrower, and a more capable thrower than I think we give him credit for when he was a good player, 13, 14, and 15. But he was a horse. I mean, the way he ran in the open field with speed and power. It's Cam Newton And Josh Allen, I don't know who else at the quarterback position runs with the same kind of speed and power. Plus, Allen is a better thrower than Cam Newton. So there's very little that Bill can do to control. Yeah, they can control Patrick Mahomes and they can control Aaron Rodgers. But when a guy's going to run for 60 yards on you and run through you on 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3, whatever the hell it was on the first drive, and also have a 26-yard scramble in there where he jukes your expensive defensive end outside linebacker, Matt Judon, kind of just leaves him grasping. I mean, he is a problem that is not going to go away anytime soon. And I wonder how much of a renovation the Patriots have to go through on defense. We've looked at an offensive rebuild, but the Patriots defensively might have to strip it down even further. J.C. Jackson might be elsewhere. Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty could be retirees. What do you got?
Tom, number one, when it comes to these players that play off schedule, that's almost all the best quarterbacks in the league right now. So if that's a challenge, of course it's a challenge, number one. But number two, you better figure something out because there's more and more of them every year. Even Joe Burrow, who's not a great athlete, is great off schedule, or he has been this year at least. We'll see how it works out one year to the next. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, these are the guys you're going to have to beat. These are the guys that are in your conference. You've got some great athletic, off-script types of quarterbacks in your conference. So how do you deal with it? It is possible to deal with, right? Josh Allen doesn't always throw for 300-plus yards and rush for 60-plus yards and throw for 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, he struggled against the Jets. He got beaten by the Jaguars, Falcons.
And there are certain things that some of those teams did to him that gave him issues. The Jaguars, for instance, blitzed him like crazy. And he had a hard time dealing with it. He actually, we've talked on this podcast about the frequency with which Mac Jones has been blitzed. No quarterback during the regular season was blitzed on more dropbacks than Josh Allen. It was a lower percentage than Mac Jones, but the overall number of dropbacks, he saw more blitzes this year than anybody else. And that doesn't happen by accident. So there are things that he has some issues with. The Patriots just couldn't figure it out, Tom. I think it's, honestly, I think tonight was more of a personnel thing than a scheme thing. You could maybe say it's a team building thing. They were not deep enough in the secondary this year. We talked about it here. Even when they were winning games like crazy, we said, what's the one if we had to pick one thing? Okay, they're going really good right now. But if they had to pick one thing, what might it be that sinks them? And we looked at that secondary. We said, God forbid J.C. Jackson gets hurt. They would be up a creek. It wasn't J.C. Jackson, and nobody really got hurt, but Jalen Mills got COVID, and things went to pieces. So I don't know how you do it, Tom. Big picture, you mentioned some of the big names they could be losing. I think speed is really important, and I think coverage is really important. And you mentioned McCourty and Jackson; those are arguably their two best guys in the secondary right now, and they're both not scheduled to be on the team as of right now next year. So they've got to get that figured out, especially against these great quarterbacks.
I think it's great that you pointed out that it was personnel that probably is what is the first culprit. Because, yeah, there was players on the field who generally aren't. But again, I wonder if that's going to mask how drastic the gap seems to be between the Patriots and the Bills, or am I overstating that gap because of what I saw in the result here and the result on December 26th? It's funny, when I write my column, I've already thought of the lead, which is, what the fudge did we just see? Not just Sunday night, but for the last 5 weeks. And for that matter, what the fudge did we see for the 7 weeks prior to that? What did we watch this year? What do we know more now than we did before? That they have a quarterback who's good, but a quarterback who's going to need to be surrounded by a hell of a lot of pieces that are better than what they have, because you can't roll it out there and count on 23 points from this offense on a regular basis, regardless of what you do against the patsies of the league. So we know there's a quarterback, we know there's a running game, we know there's capable guys on the offensive line, but I don't know how convincing those answers are now after what we've watched for the last month and a half.
Well, I think part of what happened over the last month and a half was discipline related. I don't know what other word to use.
Again, yeah.
When you talk about the penalties and the turnovers that have plagued them, that's not personnel to me. But we talk about personnel on defense. Okay, you need a little bit more speed. You need more players who can play in the secondary. Offensively, personnel-wise, Tom, I do think that this game, even though Mac Jones wasn't the problem tonight, and the offense wasn't the problem tonight, they didn't end up scoring near enough to be able to keep up with a team like that, or keep up with the Chiefs when they're at their best, or keep up with the Bengals when they're at their best. And so I look at it and I do wonder, okay, what's the best way to attack these problems moving forward? All these great quarterbacks, these great offenses in the AFC that you're going to have to beat for the next 10 years, is the best thing to do to load up on the defensive side and try to stop them? Or is the best thing to do just try to keep pace on the offensive side and hope your defense can run into a stop or two in a critical spot and you can win games that way? And Tom, I think there will be people, and I'm already seeing it on Twitter. I think it's more of a national discussion than a local discussion. Mac Jones has many more fans here locally than nationally, and I understand that. But the national discussion is, how are you going to keep up with Josh Allen when you've got Mac Jones back there?
Right.
And I think it's an interesting discussion. It's the reason why I liked somebody before the draft, and Mac Jones is clearly a better quarterback than Justin Fields is right now. But the discussion when we were talking before the draft about somebody like Fields or Lance versus Jones wasn't for right now. It was for down the road. Could you get a great player with one of these great athletes versus somebody who looks like he could be a really good player very quickly and maybe becomes a great player down the road, but he'll always have limitations that these other guys don't necessarily have.
Right.
I think that's an interesting discussion, and I'm sure it will continue to crop up, especially with Mac Jones and Josh Allen in the same division and facing each other year after year after year. Do they have enough of a ceiling offensively to run with these other teams?
And I think the nut punch that exists is these dual threat quarterbacks who are at the top of the conference, whether it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, or even Aaron Rodgers or Brady or Joe Burrow. They all have better players to throw to, all of them. So you have kind of a double jeopardy for Mac Jones. He doesn't have high-end talent. He's got some talent. Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is a 2-ish, 3-ish. Okay, he's overachieving at the point he is. He should not be the focal point of the offense that he is. And Kendrick Bourne is a nice too. You need an Odell Beckham Jr. type player. I don't know if it's Jamar Chase level player, Devontae Smith level player.
Calvin Ridley.
But you need something more sudden. Say it again, bud.
Calvin Ridley might be available.
Calvin Ridley. Hunter Henry's a good player. There's a lot to like about him. Johnny Smith has brought you nothing. Nelson Aguilar is bringing you nothing. And so you have the double jeopardy of your talent is not as good as those quarterbacks who have multiple skills. And you can't even find out if he can achieve at that level until you make that talent better around him, right? So you can't tether a quarterback who needs help to players who aren't going to really help him. I mean, we even saw that with the greatest quarterback of all time just 2 years ago in 2019. Brady couldn't do it with the guys he had around him. Actually, even Tennessee, think about that. I mean, they have A.J. Brown, Julio Jones hasn't panned out, but they have the best back in the league in many ways in Derrick Henry. So it's just not there for Mac Jones yet. So to say he doesn't have that high-end talent, personally, I think is premature. How did he play on Saturday night?
I thought he was okay. I thought
he showed up.
He showed up, and he was their best player for probably the first. He was their best player tonight. I think it wasn't a great game for him, but he probably was their best player. Him or Kendrick Bourne. I like the resolve that I think he showed late in this game. At least he continued to play. He was not done, even though the game was clearly over. And I liked that. Could the could the picks have been better throws? Man, that first throw, it was just such a great play by Micah Hyde. It's really hard to criticize Mac Jones for that one. And so I won't. Could it have been laid out a little bit more and away from the safety a little bit more? I think that's what he would tell you. He told us that after the game. It could have been a better throw on his part. The second one, I couldn't tell. I don't know, Tom, if you could see it better than we could on the broadcast. Was that tipped at the line of scrimmage?
No, it was tipped halfway there, kind of redirected by a linebacker.
Okay. So it was, so who knows?
It was a double tip. I think it hit Hunter Henry's as well.
Would you have put that on him? Was that a bad throw? We really couldn't. It was hard to tell what happened on that one.
It was going to be into traffic. If it eluded it, it was going to be, caught and tackled immediately. But it wasn't ghastly.
I thought, Tom, he avoided pressure well. He scrambled for yardage when he needed to. It was like they tried.
I thought he was decisive and careful.
They tried to shoot themselves in the foot early in this game too. Penalties, drops. Jonnu Smith is breaking up a pass intended for somebody else on his own team by the sideline. I mean, it was a joke. And
it was.
And he was still on a couple of 3rd and longs, was able to bail them out of it. So he was clearly not the problem tonight. And I thought the way he played, Tom, was significantly better than what we saw from him in 3 of those last 4 games of the regular season. And I think it nipped in the bud some of those conversations that we've been having. And we previewed, we said, what if he plays like that in this playoff game? All off season, we're going to be talking about Mac Jones and if he's good enough.
Oh, we're going to be talking about that anyway.
We are anyway, but I think he's tapping the brakes on that conversation with what he did tonight. I think he has people feeling a little bit better than maybe what they felt 24 hours ago.
I think the ensuing week is going to revolve around whether or not Bill Belichick needs help in coaching the defense. And I can't disagree with that. And it's going to come back to personnel. That will be the fallback. Is it, look, that wasn't us out there. That wasn't the Patriots defense. But even if it was the Patriots defense out there, the Patriots defense, I'm not sure is good enough. I'm not sure of that. I mean, even though we saw them turn away the Colts in the second half after the 20-0 lead was gained, for the most part, even though we saw it against Buffalo, though they beat up on some really crap teams, they have significant improvement to make in terms of team speed and age and youth, and just stop. Jamie Collins is done. Dante Hightower is at the end. Van Noy had a tough game. I think he's banged up a little bit, but I just don't think he's been great. Judon clearly hasn't been the Judon that he was for the first 12 games. So there's a lot of answers to try and figure out between, are we really that, or is that just an apparition?
And there's a lot of time, obviously, for us to go over how the team is built and the changes they can make. But I do have a big picture takeaway, Tom, that I want to hear your thoughts on. Today felt like a real blow to anyone who thought that in today's NFL, you could win the way they are trying to win, or the way they tried to win, at least this year, with a rookie quarterback and a great running game and a great defense. We knew all year long that your margin for error when you're built that way is slim in terms of being able to succeed at a high level late in the year. I wonder if it's non-existent, meaning you don't really have a chance against teams with great offenses and great quarterbacks. The way the game is now, the way the rules are, the way everyone is accustomed to playing because of the concepts that are coming from the college game and the experience these young players have, you're up a creek if you're trying to just go about your business by stopping great quarterbacks on the defensive side. And I look at it and I just say, do they have to get away from this? Let's be big up front. Let's be big on the offensive line. Let's zig where everyone else is zagged, right? We give them a lot of credit for when they do that and they succeed. But is that the right way to go about it? Because that team you just played, I called them soft for a good chunk of this year. But that's a modern NFL success story. Lots of receivers, great quarterback that you drafted highly, who was a wild stallion, to use your words, that you've molded into one of the best in the league. An okay offensive line, a not very good running game and a very good defense. I'll give them that. They've got a great defense on that side.
They have great offensive team speed too, as you've pointed out.
So is the philosophy, is the team building philosophy something they have to reconsider now and go about it a different way?
I don't know, but I will say this, and we'll wrap it right here after that. And we'll be back with you on Tuesday for another Patriots Talk podcast. December 6th might have been the worst thing that could have happened to the Patriots. Because you might be right. You can't win like that. But the Patriots found fool's gold that night when in gale force winds, they were able to do to the Bills what they did to the Bills without throwing the football. And I think that might have fed into at least fans and media perception. And certainly, I mean, as we find out as the years go by, everything that we think, when you talk to the coaches and the individuals who are directly involved with all this stuff, you find out they were thinking the exact same thing you were. And I think that the Patriots' dominance that night certainly fed into the notion that we don't have to throw sometimes. We're that good. And you look that way. But it was fool's gold. You can't live like that.
To that point, Tom, talk to people early in the week in the building there who truly believed that the conditions here in Buffalo, on the road, hostile environment, good team, all that, but the conditions would help them.
Mm-hmm.
Were the conditions a factor at all today?
Honestly, I thought offensively that they had some chances to do some damage. There were holes that got closed up early in the running game. There were tackles that were made. Yeah. Yeah, they had chances. They just
but those chances would have been there, whether it was 60 degrees or whether it was 6. The
no, I know, but I guess
today the conditions really didn't matter, and they
didn't. I guess I'm answering the wrong questions because it's late, but it's just
okay. I'm just saying, if you look at how your team is built and say, hey, we're built for outdoors, Northeast, January, December, when games really matter. And maybe you are, but it turns out, even these high flying passing attacks can perform in those conditions too. It's just, I think that's part of what this game told us tonight. I think there are some interesting big picture team building football philosophy takeaways from a game like this, because it was the result was just so dramatically one-sided. I think when a game plays out that way, you got to start looking real hard at how you viewed the game, big picture.
Patriots entered the 2021 offseason examining how they were going to rectify the situation they'd gotten themselves into post-Brady. Did a great job of fixing it with the money that they have squirreled away for free agency. They're going to spend the 2022 offseason sucking on 47-17, and it wasn't that close. And trying to figure out what happened down the stretch. Phil and I will be there to document it every damn step of the way, believe you me. And we'll see you on Tuesday. Phil, you all thought out?
Yeah, I feel good. Loaded up on hand warmers. I'm fine.
You flying home, or did you drive out there like an idiot?
I flew. So I'll be flying home, hopefully.
What time?
There's some snow coming our way, so we'll see if
what time
the
wheels up
should get off the ground. Wheels up in 5 hours. It's 2:05.
Oh, crochet. That means you have to get up moving in 3. All right, bro. Great work. Season's over, but we ain't done. See you in a minute.
Bye.